Good morning, everybody. Give me 1 second. Here we go. We are good on LinkedIn. As I can see, we are. Turn my mic down on LinkedIn. All right, we are good on LinkedIn. We are good on Facebook. We are good on Rumble, YouTube, X. What's going on? Instagram. Good morning, and we are good over on TikTok. Yeah, I started a bit late today. I had to finish a some documentation I need to send to a uh, team that I'm working with, a consulting client that I'm working with. I need to get that document out this morning. So we got that finished. Still got some more I'll do with that. But we're going to get into the topic here today. Today, we're going to talk about the Epstein list because everybody's been talking about, well, for years now, everyone's been talking about this Epstein list. We're going to get into what it is, why everybody's talking about it, why people are throwing this thing around. Often they're throwing it around talking about Donald Trump. But we're going to get into what is possibly on this list or in the documents about Jeff Epstein, which many of you probably have heard of him. But I'm gonna make sure everybody has context. And oops, I didn't put my mic on. Can y'all hear me on Instagram? I didn't clip the mic on. The mic was on, but it wasn't clipped on, so y'all can probably hear me better on Instagram now that I put it on. Let's get into it, and let's just get into it. And we got other things we may talk about. We may talk about these other countries. I've been told that we can say the names of certain countries. I don't know if I want to risk it. I ain't want to risk it. Maybe later, maybe when we get near the end. So Jeffrey Epstein, he passed away in 2019. Those of you who know who Jeffrey Epstein is, he was a finance guy, but he wasn't famous for being a finance guy. He made his money in finance, but he became famous because he owned an island. So this guy, looks like he was making some money. He owned an island, and it was called Epstein Island. It was famously known as Epstein Island. And on this island, it turns out he was doing some things he shouldn't have been doing. That he was bringing some underage children. I don't know if it was girls and boys. It might have been some boys, but for the most part, it was girls. He was bringing these underage girls to his island, and he and his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, they were basically coordinating all types of things that you shouldn't be doing with young children sexually on this island. And Epstein was inviting a bunch of people who he knew, friends of his, to the island. And allegedly, according to what some say, suspicions, these other people were engaging and partaking in these same engagements with these young kids during the time that Epstein was popular on his island. Now, the challenge with this whole situation is that Jeff Epstein was a famous guy. He was known for finance, which means not every single person who shook his hand or took a picture with him necessarily was doing all the stuff he was doing. Similar to right now, P. Diddy or Puffy, that a lot of people were known for having partied with P. Diddy or made music with him or knew him somehow, some way related to business. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were doing all the crazy stuff that he was doing or that he's been alleged to have done in this court case is coming out right now. So this is where we got to kind of look at this in full context. So the public outcry has continued since 2019. Epstein passed away in 2019. There was a docu-series about Epstein and the island. I believe it was on Netflix. Was that documentary on Netflix? For those of you who haven't seen it, how many of you saw that documentary? Put yes in the comments if you saw the doc and put no if you didn't. Good morning over there, Courtney. Good morning, Nikki. Good morning, Dolly Mac. I see some of you commenting. Good morning to y'all checking in. And yeah, we started a bit late. I just had to finish up some documentation this morning. All right, so some of y'all saw the document. Some of you saw the documentary. Some of you did not. Let me find out. I think it was on Netflix. Let me see. Netflix. Epstein documentary. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on Netflix. It was called Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. So it came out in 2020. I did see this docu. I believe it was a series. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich is the name of the documentary series. I think it was more than one episode. Let me check. Maybe I'm wrong. And it was, let's see, number one, number two, number three, number four. It's a 4-part series. Each episode is about an hour apiece. It's easy watch. So any of you who haven't seen it, go look it up on Netflix. I know all y'all got Netflix. So the public outcry has continued that And Britt said, I didn't finish it. It was too much. Y'all should look this up. It's on Netflix. So go look it up and watch the documentary. So why haven't the full? Because what hasn't been released yet is the flight logs, like who was getting on flights to go to Epstein Island, because those are documented. The client lists, who were the clients that were coming to Epstein Island. The grand jury testimonials, which were sealed, meaning people had to go to court and, excuse me, people had to go to court and talk about this. But what they said in court, the actual testimonies have been sealed, which means the government has not released it, and the digital records, because Jeff Epstein, similar to P. Diddy, Puffy, these people who tend to be into this kinky or even nefarious or illegal sexual stuff, they tend to have this bad habit of actually recording all the shit that they're doing, which is really dumb because you are setting yourself up to easily be found guilty of a crime if you got everything filmed and you're doing something illegal. And Jeff Epstein was doing things that were directly illegal in filming it. P. Diddy, at least for him, stuff he was doing was not illegal that he has on film, but it does kind of make his reputation look bad. A little bit different for P. Diddy. Jeff Epstein was filming himself doing things that were clearly illegal, and was the reason why he was found guilty. He was convicted, and he ended up taking his own life in prison. For those who don't know what happened to Jeff Epstein, he passed away in 2019. At least according to the official story, he took his own life in prison. Some people think that he didn't take his own life. Somebody else took his life, but the official story is that he took his own life. So the question is, why haven't all these seized digital records and all these things been released? So in 2020, as I mentioned, a Netflix documentary, multiple lawsuits came out and they spotlighted this shadowy network that surrounded Jeff Epstein. But the Department of Justice and the FBI contend that a whole lot of it remains classified material. And classified material simply means that the government has it and the government knows what it contains. Yet, can we like the live, please, on TikTok? Can we get the 5,000 likes here? We're at 3,000 right now. The government has the documents, and everything has been seen by the government, but they don't release those documents. And the reason that they don't is they're citing victim privacy is number one. That's the biggest thing, because you got to remember we're talking about basically assault of a sexual nature that happened to someone. Even if this person was 40 years old, those documents don't necessarily get released because you are protecting the privacy of that person who was the victim. And I think everybody can understand and appreciate that. And then you multiply that by the fact that these are underage children. So it's not like he was doing this to some 27-year-old. He's doing this to kids who might be 10, 12, 13 years old. So these documents that the government has access to, one reason why they're not releasing the documents is because it would expose some of those people who dealt with this abuse. And now everybody's going to know they dealt with this abuse, which could be traumatizing to those people. And it's generally been accepted as a law of, not even a law, but a norm socially, that if someone's been abused in that way, that if you can protect their identity, you do. And that's one of the reasons why they haven't released these documents. Also, there are still ongoing investigations, according to some people, and national security issues, because Jeff Epstein had an island that wasn't in part of the contiguous United States. And anybody who was on that log, again, it could be a security issue as to what exactly was happening, because not everyone agrees that everything we've heard about Jeff Epstein is the whole story about Jeff Epstein, because his partner, who was Ghislaine Maxwell, she's still alive, and she is incarcerated right now because she was pretty much his accomplice in the entire situation. So in 2025, the current attorney general, that's Pam Bondi, from, I believe she is from Florida and now working with Donald Trump. They announced this all in, I believe this was in January. They told a bunch of influencers and known internet people, hey, we're about to release the Epstein documents, come to Washington, D.C. And they made a big hullabaloo about this. We're going to release these documents. We're going to give them to these people who have prominent platforms on social media to put the story out. Then they released the documents, and it was like a flat. It was nothing in it, because the documents that they released to these influencers, and a lot of influencers were disappointed, and the fans and the viewers were disappointed about this, because the documents that Pam Bondi released, there wasn't much in there. There wasn't really anything in these documents that got released. And all the documents were heavily redacted, which means if you ever see a document from like a court case or a testimony in court, and there's a lot of stuff in it, but some of the phrases or names are blocked out, so where you can't actually see it, that's called redactation. So those are redacted. So it was heavily redacted documents that they shared, And they got a lot of criticism for this. And this whole big reveal of we're going to put out the Epstein files has never actually happened. And everybody's been talking about this for 5 years, and the documents have never actually come out. Elon Musk recently reignited the debate when he posted that tweet claiming that the files are being withheld to protect powerful figures, specifically Donald Trump. Remember when Elon put out that post a couple of weeks ago that Donald Trump's in the Epstein files? That's the reason why the Epstein files are not coming out, which sounds good, but I don't know why everybody got all excited about that, because people have been claiming that Donald Trump's in the Epstein files since Epstein passed away in 2019. People have been saying that because Jeff Epstein, again, he was known to have a lot of money, and he mixed with other people who had money. And Donald Trump's a guy who's been known to mix with other people who have money. And this is way before politics. So there are pictures of Donald Trump partying with Epstein and Maxwell, and there's a bunch of pictures of them together, but it's pictures of other powerful people with Jeff Epstein as well, which is really the crux of this entire conversation. Carolina over there on YouTube, good morning, good to see you. And this is the crux of the entire situation, which is what we're going to get into here today. Let me make sure my mic is good over there. My mic's good over there. So today, lawmakers and watchdog groups continue pushing for more disclosure, put out the Epstein files, put out more about these Epstein files, but the Department of Justice insists that releasing the full Epstein files will pose serious risks to victims and to due process. You may have heard or saw the clips of Kash Patel, who is right now working in the Trump administration. He was on Joe Rogan maybe about a week and a half ago, and Joe Rogan was kind of pressing him on releasing the Epstein files, and Kash was basically giving a word salad, which politicians have to do when you don't really want to answer a direct question. It's a very clear question, but you don't really want to answer it because you can't answer it. And this is what happens when you work in the government. You can't answer every question very honestly and openly because you would be betraying certain things that you're supposed to not be letting out. This is the way it works when you're in the government. So a lot of these files are not being released because the DOJ says it will be risk to victims and also risk to due process. So the question is now, is this ongoing secrecy a legitimate safeguard, or are names being hidden to avoid fallout among elites? And that's what we're going to talk about here today. My general answer to this question, without even going into any more context, is it's the latter. That actually is kind of both. I would say it's about 30% that they're doing this to actually safeguard and protect victims, because there are victims of sexual assault. I think we can generally agree there are victims of this assault. Let's just say Epstein and Maxwell alone, because they did get convicted. There are victims out there who don't want their identities exposed because they went through something very traumatizing, and the whole damn world knowing about it would maybe re-traumatize them. And again, I'm not even that big into this, even the language of this, but it is accepted as a societal norm that you don't do it. So based on that alone, I say fine. All right, if someone has gone through something traumatic, especially as an underage child, and their brain is not even fully formed to where they can process what happened to them, and they already know they went through it. They already testified that they went through it, and now the world is demanding, well, let's put out all the documents so we can find out who it was and who did it, and basically relitigate this. Those people who were victims have to relive this, and now not only do they relive it, but now instead of just the grand jury and the court and the lawyers knowing who you are, now you got 350 million people knowing who you are, because people, what would happen here, and I'll probably get into this in my points, is that let's just say there's somebody who people don't like that's on the list. Let's say Bill Clinton's on the list, for example, and a bunch of people don't like Bill Clinton. They're going to go and say, hey, Bill Clinton's on the list. He did this, this, and this to this person. That name's going to get out there. And you'll know what happens on the internet when a name comes out. People are going to go digging all over the place, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, yearbooks, anywhere they can to find that person. And now that person's going to be exposed as, hey, you're the person who Bill Clinton did this and that and the third to on Epstein Island. And now that person's getting phone calls. Now somebody's asking them to come on a podcast. Now their whole situation is being retried in the public sphere, which is way bigger than just being in a courtroom. Again, do we really want to put people through this just so we can prove that Donald Trump or whoever person, whatever elite person, quote unquote elite person you don't like was on the list? I understand why they wouldn't do it just on that alone. At the same time, the other side of it, I would say, so I said 30%, 70%. Let me redo that. I would say it's actually about 50-50. So I'll change my answer here. I would say it's 50-50. 50% is that you can't put those people through that trauma all over again, or 10x or 100x that trauma just because you want to find out if Donald Trump's on the list. It's actually a very selfish way of looking at things. And at the same time, there are people who are quote unquote elites and well known people who are probably on that list, and they're probably in the documents and they're probably in the files. Not enough to get charged or go to court or go to jail so far, I guess we see. But at the same time, the guilt by association, because Jeff Epstein's name is known for basically one thing: having that island and abusing these underage children on his island. That's what he's known for. So anybody whose name is associated with being on those flight logs and going back and forth from Epstein Island, well, the guilt is going to be, this guy's known for this. You were going to the island, so people are going to jump to the conclusion that you were doing some of those bad things on the island. Which again, just because it was happening on the island doesn't necessarily mean that if you went to the island, you were doing it. Not necessarily. Maybe you just sat there and have a meeting with him, or you went to meet with a friend because he's a friend of yours. Doesn't necessarily mean you were doing anything wrong. But again, do most people want to hear that? Answer is hell no. So let's talk about this. Let's get up the likes on TikTok. Can we get the 20,000 likes, please? So the first thing, as I already explained, this prevents the re-traumatization of victims whose identities would be exposed. And not might be exposed, they would be exposed. If you had to put all this stuff out, they're going to say Donald Trump did this to this person. And again, even if the person is some no-name person who we've never heard of, now everybody's going to go looking for that person. What if you were that person? And you already went to court. You already testified what happened to you. It's already been documented. You already had to say it in front of the court. Now, the whole world knows about it because allegedly Donald Trump is the one who did it to you. Now, all these people who don't like Donald Trump are going to go looking for you to get you to say, yes, Donald Trump did that. Why? Because it will be a win for them to say, here's Donald Trump's victim. And again, this has nothing to do with them actually protecting you or giving a damn about you. It's just they're using you because they want to get this guy. And that's not okay. So those of you who are wondering why this list is not getting, or the list or the files or whatever are not getting released, this is a very strong point as to why this won't get released. And I feel this is fair enough. Just on this point alone is enough. What if that was your child? What if it had been you? Would you want the list? Would you want these documents or these files released just to satisfy the need of some people who want to go after some known person and just smudge their reputation? It's not like you're going to go to jail. Not like that person's going to go to jail because the file came out. All you're doing is just trying to make them look bad reputationally. What is that actually doing for you? And at what cost to the people who went through this situation? Some say, though, it is fueling a conspiracy theory that there's a cover-up of high-profile names. And I say, fair enough. Now, I believe it's both at the same time. That you may be preventing high-profile names from being mentioned in these files, but at the same time, superseding that is the kids thing. Again, these were underage kids. It's not like Epstein was bringing in 30-year-olds. These are underage kids he was bringing in and doing whatever he was doing to. Watch the Netflix documentary. A bunch of people who were part of the abuse on the Epstein Island, they are in the documentary actually telling you what happened to them, how it happened, what they went through, et cetera, et cetera. Not everybody, but some of them have come forward and said, this is what happened to them. I guess they don't mind being exposed, but not everybody who goes through such an experience wants to be exposed. So this whole thing of they're covering up, and this is one of the arguments that I had made in the past when I hadn't thought about it as deeply, but that I believe there are people on both sides of the political aisle, so to speak, well-known people who are probably in those documents. So if Trump is in the documents, then there's also people on the political left who are in the documents. So if you were to release the documents, it's not like it would be some partisan thing that all the Democrats are going to be happy because there's only Republicans on the list, or vice versa. Jeff Epstein was a guy who had money. Well, guess what? Guess who has money? Democrats and Republicans got money. All right, having money is not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. Jeff Epstein was messing with people who had money, people who are elites. Well, there's a whole bunch of people on both sides of that aisle. So what this is doing, this non-release of the files, it's protecting the integrity of ongoing investigations and ongoing prosecutions. Because allegedly, according to Kash Patel, according to Pam Bondi, according to the official word from this whole situation, is that this investigation is not complete, that they're still trying to investigate. They're still trying to figure this out. Who did what, who might be charged, et cetera, et cetera. The problem I have with that is that, again, if they come out and they say they're going to charge this person who might be on the left, can we get the 25,000 likes TikTok, please? Thank you for the 20K. They charge someone who might be on the left. Well, that person's on the left is going to say, well, what about these people on the right? and eventually it's going to take everybody down. And what's to be gained from this? Overall, what's to be gained from this? Some say, well, what will be gained is justice. People feel that they have closure. Now we got an actual completeness to this whole situation or whatever it may be. What happened on Epstein Island? I say bullshit. I call bullshit on that. What I think, the reason I think most people want these lists to be released is just so they can find some dirt on somebody that they don't like, or somebody who might not even be that well known, but if their name is in these files, they're going to become well known because you took 10 trips to Epstein Island in 2017. Why'd you take those trips? So basically, it becomes content for news articles, live streams, videos, it's podcast episodes, et cetera, just because you have more material for something to be talked about. And people are saying this is creating political distrust when only partial files are released. And I say that's completely okay. Who trusts politics right now? I don't think anybody trusts politics now. So I don't think this is creating political distrust. It may be expanding, for lack of a better term, political distrust, because I don't think people trust politics right now. And with an investigation like this, where a lot of the documents are sealed, what do you want? What are you asking for? So the government, they're just trying to comply with federal confidentiality rules regarding sealed grand jury records. So a lot of what happened in the Epstein case are sealed grand jury records, which I explained already what that means. You already know what it means just by listening to the term. The records are sealed, which means you as a public citizen are not allowed to see these documents because the court process, the judge decided, and the government decided, we're not putting these documents out. Now, there are some court cases where the documents do come out, and there are some cases where the documents don't come out. This is a case where the documents didn't come out. So it leaves unresolved names like Trump, Clinton, Prince Andrew floating in the rumor mill, because people are saying that these people visited Epstein Island, and here's a picture of Bill Clinton standing with Epstein. Here's a picture of Donald Trump having a glass of champagne with Epstein. So that must mean that he was doing some negative thing. I say, not really. And this ensures sensitive intelligence or classified sources do not get exposed, because there are, again, I said this many times, I'll say it again, I'll probably say it again before I'm done in this live, that a lot of the names and identities that would be exposed if these files get put out are people who you don't know and are not the people that people are excited to see in these files. People want to see the files because they want to see if Bill Clinton's in there, or if Donald Trump is in there, or I don't know, name somebody else. Some P. Diddy is in there. They want to see if any of these people are in there so that they can get excited about that. But the collateral damage of looking for Donald Trump's name in those files, that you're going to expose a whole lot of other names who nobody knows and nobody's paying any attention to. But now all of a sudden, everybody's going to know them, and everybody's going to want to be all in their business and want to hear from these people just because their names are in those files. But those people right now are just living their lives as normal citizens, hopefully recovered from what happened to them, or maybe ongoing recovery from what happened to them. They're the collateral damage. So as much as people like to say, well, billionaires are doing this and they're exposing people and they're, exploiting people in order to get what they want, the same people who are trying to go after them in this situation for the Epstein thing, you're looking to exploit other everyday citizens just for your personal satisfaction of knowing that you exposed Donald Trump or Bill Clinton or whoever else it may be. And again, people seem to completely ignore this point. They completely ignore this point when they're talking about release the Epstein files, because again, in those files, a bunch of people who don't want their name exposed, and they don't try to get their names exposed. They're not famous. They don't have their names on buildings. They don't have blue checks on social media. They are just trying to live their everyday lives. Now, all of a sudden, the whole world wants to be in your business just because your name is in those files. So others are saying, though, critics are saying you're blocking transparency and preventing accountability for individuals who are potentially involved. It's very interesting to me when everyday citizens try to throw out this accountability thing. Like, who the hell are you to hold anybody accountable? Are you the court? Are you a judge? Are you a prosecutor? Do you work for the Department of Justice? What do you mean accountability? A lot of everyday citizens tend to throw this word out. Well, we got to put the information out so that we can hold people accountable. How are you going to hold somebody accountable? What are you going to do? You're going to make a YouTube video? You're going to do a live stream on TikTok? You're going to make a post on Facebook? What are you going to do to hold that person accountable? The accountability process in the United States of America comes through the court system. Now, there are ways you can hold people accountable, like your kids or the players on your soccer team if you're the coach, or the kids in your classroom if you're a teacher. But just generally speaking, when it comes to public sentiment, just talking about somebody is not holding them accountable. It's just you talking shit on the internet and through your phone because you have one. So this whole concept of you're blocking transparency, well, certain things are not transparent. Not everything is for public consumption. And a lot of you who are using social media, you should take heed to what I just said. Not everything is for public consumption. All right, there are some parts of your life that don't need to be on the internet. Even if you want people to know, it might be a good idea to not let people know about certain aspects of your life. Everything should not be online, and everything is not public news. So just because something happened in court does not necessarily mean that the public is entitled to know about it. And again, this is one of those examples. You remember years ago when Barack Obama's, was it Obama? Yeah, Obama put in the call to say, go and get Osama. And they got him and they took him out. And Hillary Clinton at the time, who was working for Barack Obama, she's out like, yeah, we got to show the body. We got to show the body. And Barack Obama said, no, we already scored the touchdown. There's no need to spike the football. And the whole idea there, the argument was, just because something happened and we know it happened does not mean we got to put all the information we have out to the world. And Barack Obama said, we're not going to display the body. They didn't display the body. They got rid of it. The whole thing is accountability for individuals potentially involved. Again, the accountability happens to the Department of Justice. It doesn't happen through the internet or through blogging or podcasting. So I reject this point. This allows the Department of Justice to vet and redact only what is legally sensitive, which is what they're supposed to do, because again, you have to protect the innocent. And there are a bunch of innocent people involved in the Epstein case who should not be exposed just because some people want to go get somebody who is publicly known. And others say, however, heavy redactions reinforce the idea that content is being actively suppressed. So, of course, it's being fucking actively suppressed. I've already explained that. There's a reason they're suppressing it. They're trying to keep a lot of nosy people out of other people's business that they shouldn't be in. So this enables a phased release, so context can be reviewed before public disclosure. This is one of the things that happen with bureaucratic organizations. The United States government is the biggest bureaucratic organization, biggest bureaucracy known to man. And when you deal with a bureaucratic organization, sometimes things happen slow, things get released slow, and they do things at their own pace. And you cannot speed up the government to do anything. Only thing you can speed up the government to do is anything that involves the military. Anything other than that is going to go at the pace that they want to go. And if you need things to happen fast, I suggest you not do it through the government. Just my personal opinion. So pushing out only old, previously available files feels performative. And it was performative. When Pam Bondi announced to those influencers, we're going to put out these Epstein files, and they went to DC and got a whole bunch of stuff that we already knew. I understand that they were annoyed, and it felt like the DOJ was just doing some performative shit, and they got called out for it. Like within 24 hours, they were getting called out for that, and they kind of looked bad in doing that. And at the same time, that's par for the course. That's par for the course. You depend on the government to give you a scoop that's going to help you. Is that what you expect from the government? Who told you that? Who told you that's the way the government works? It's never done that before. Now, all of a sudden, the government's going to give this scoop of news, this scoop of information. They're going to give it to some influencers on the internet. Really? Y'all really fell for that? So all you influencers who went for that, I get why you went. I would have went too. They told me, hey, you're invited to the special event where we're going to release this thing and I'm going to be one of the ones with the scoop. I probably would have showed up just to get it. But if they ended up playing me the way they played those influencers, I would say, okay. I mean, you just gotta chalk that one up. That's what you just gotta chalk that one up. Just take the L and keep it moving. So the DOJ claims that release over 100 pages was a good faith first step. So that's what they gave to those influencers. They gave them about 100 pages of material. And that's a good faith first step. They're trying to build faith with the general public as to why they are doing things the way that they're doing. But others say that this real client list either it doesn't exist or is bigger than they say it is. Maybe there's a bunch of clients. And I think the client list is probably, or quote unquote client list, is bigger than they say it is. Client being people who visited Epstein Island for whatever reason that we may never know. How many people visited that island whose names we may be able to recognize if we saw the whole list? I think it's probably more people than what most people suspect. We don't know what the actual number is. We don't know who the actual names are. Can we get the 30,000 likes on TikTok, please? But I think the list is larger, and they may be on one level saying, okay, we get to protect these people's identities. This would cause a whole new level of uproar that we don't really need. And it doesn't really matter except for content creators like maybe myself or others. Let's say they put the list out and there's 100 names on there. There's like 60 of those names of people we know. I guarantee you I would do a whole live stream talking about it. But if they don't do that, I'm okay. Now there are some creators out there who they're staking their whole situation on getting this list because they need that in order to sustain themselves. I don't need it. I would use it, but I don't need it. And there's a difference. So recent bipartisan pressure, including Elon Musk making his claim about Trump and Congress allegedly saying that they want it released. This is showing growing support. I disagree. Congress saying that they want something or Elon Musk saying that he wants something is not growing support. That's a handful of people who are entrenched in somehow, some way with or around DC politics saying that something should be put out. And that sounds good. It's a great virtue signal. And this is why Elon Musk probably ended up deleting his posts about Donald Trump's and the Epstein files. And that's the reason why they haven't been released. Again, that wasn't even a bombshell point. He put it out there as if he was dropping some bomb that nobody had ever heard before. Haven't all y'all heard? Put yes or no in the comments. Has any of you heard people accuse Donald Trump of being in the Epstein files way before Elon made that tweet 2 weeks ago? Put yes or no. If you heard people say Donald Trump had something to do with Epstein way before Elon made that tweet. So I don't understand why when Elon put that tweet out, people were going crazy as if this is some type of special announcement. I mean, they did it because it was Elon saying it. I get that part. But at the same time, he wasn't even saying anything. Like, people have been saying that for years. Ever since Epstein passed away, people are like, oh, Donald Trump was messing with him. Okay. I mean, we already knew that. It's like a 5-year-old news item. But when Elon put it out, everybody was getting all excited. I guess just because Elon was the one saying it. So I guess that's the reason people are all excited. But anyway, so that's not bipartisan pressure. So they say Elon Musk and people in Congress, that doesn't mean anything to me. All right, a bunch of people in Congress. So what do I care what they want? Congress works for us. I don't care what people in Congress want. What you want is to keep your job, and to keep your job, you better do what the people who voted for you asked you to do. That's what all the thing I want to hear a person in Congress tell me they want. Other than that, miss me with that. So the DOJ claims that further documents would include no new revelations. So this is what the DOJ is saying. If we put all the documents out, you're not going to learn anything new. So people say, okay, give us all the documents then. And they're saying no. And the good thing about the government, at least when you work there, is that they can say no, and that's pretty much the end of the story. So longtime investigators say that the client list is a myth. So people who are investigators, either on the inside or outside of this case, they're saying that the client list, this Epstein client list, is not even a real thing. It's just people have made this up because they need something to talk about, and they're using it to stir outrage or get people excited. And maybe I'm using it right now. I'm talking about it because Elon Musk's post got a lot of people to re-excited, for lack of a better term, re-engaged on this concept. So I said, okay, I might as well talk about it since Elon went and made it a news story. Thank you, Elon, for giving me some content here today, for putting that out. Can we get 35,000 likes on TikTok? We kind of slow over there. The likes are kind of lethargic on TikTok today. Can we get to 31,000? Irma, thank you for the hand heart. The 2025 release by Pam Bondi, it builds on this court-ordered unsealing from the Maxwell case. So the Maxwell case and the Epstein case were a little bit, pretty much separate from each other, but of course related. So there was a court-ordered unsealing from the Maxwell case. So some of those files have come out, but not all the files have come out yet. But this ongoing secrecy maintains the media speculation rather than settling public curiosity. And I would say, so the fuck what? The United States government, here's where I would defend the government. I've trashed the government many times. I tell you, do not depend on the government. Do not trust people who work in the government. If you work in the government, you can't do what you want to do, and you may have to trade some of the things that you want to stand on to get things done if you work in the government. And the government is the biggest, slowest bureaucracy known to man. I've said all those things about the U.S. government, and they're all true. I'm not a big fan of the U.S. government, other than, just protect my rights and get the hell out of my way. However, I will defend the U.S. government here by saying that their secrecy about this case, based on everything I've told you already, it maintains media speculation. My response to that is, so what? And it doesn't settle public curiosity. My response to that is double, so what? So what? There you go. Double, so what? There's public curiosity about a subject, government. That means you got to give us all the information we want. Really? Is that the frame that we want to use? I'm curious about something, so you got to tell me everything I want to know about it. That's not the way it works. How many of you would just tell people everything they want to know about you just because they're curious? Everything they want to know about your business, about your home life, about your private life, about where you live, about your kids, about everything, just because they're curious. Just because the general public is curious about something does not mean the government is required to fulfill your curiosity or satisfy or satiate your curiosity by giving you the information that you're asking for. It's a bullshit frame. And at the same time, there are some aspects in which that exact frame is true, but it's not true all the time. So just using that as a frame is not a good enough argument. Media speculation. Well, the media's job is to speculate. So media speculation, if you settled all media speculation, there'd be nothing for the media to do. The media would no longer exist. A lot of people will lose their jobs. So media speculation is a fine thing to maintain, because media speculation gives the ladies on The View or the people on CNN or the people on Fox News, it gives them material to talk about, because there are questions that we don't have answers to. Because if we had answers to all the questions, again, what do we need them for? To interpret? No, we can interpret on our own. So the DOJ law enforcement contextualizes redaction scope as necessary under the law, which I've already explained. But others say this redaction level is so heavy that the documents offer no meaningful new insight because they have all these redactions on it. And to that, I say, again, so what? Why are you entitled to insight just because the government allegedly has some documents that you want? You're not entitled to that insight. Again, this is my main point here. Main thing that I'll say about the Epstein files and the Epstein list, whatever you want to call it, is that underage children were victimized in that process. That we generally can accept as true. Most of us accept that as true. Okay, that's not speculation, right? There were underage children involved, and their names are in those files. So if those files come out naming the other people's names, their names are going to get exposed as well. And those people do not need to go through that trauma all over again. Again, multiplied by 1,000, because now 300 million people know their names, and 300 million people are looking for them, looking them up, asking them to come on podcasts, asking them to be a source for their book, asking them to do an interview, asking you to come on CNN because it implicates Donald Trump, or asking you to come on Fox because it implicates Bill Clinton. All right, why would you want to send that person through that again? What if that's your 25-year-old daughter and she was 16 when it happened, and she's been trying to piece herself back together ever since that happened, but now the files come out because people are curious and some influencers want to talk some shit, and now her name's out in the world again, and now everybody's looking her up, and now her coworkers who didn't know anything about that, now they're like, hey, she works with me, and now everybody's looking at her crazy, and now she got to go through that all over again. Why would you want that? Just so you can satisfy your curiosity about the Epstein files? That's not okay. That is not okay. So in this case, I'm defending the United States government. I will defend the United States government on this whole context of the Epstein files. That's where I stand on it. All that said, let's see what we got going on in the comments here. I don't think I saw anything on Instagram. What we got over on TikTok? We're at 38,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 100K today? Maybe we might only get to 100K today because I started later than usual, but 100K is a reasonable compromise. Can we get to 100K likes? We're at 39,000. Can we get to 40,000, please? Before I start reading the comments, can we get to 40,000 likes? I'm about to be on my Kevin Samuels right here. Let's get the likes up before I get to the comments. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to start doing like Kevin Samuels. Rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. Those who don't know who he is, he's this guy who used to talk about relationships on YouTube. And what he would do is anytime during the middle of his live, keep liking the live, folks, keep liking the live. Anytime during the middle of his live streams, if he didn't like how many likes he had, he would stop talking. He would turn on some music and he would say, get the likes up. I'm not going to keep talking until y'all finish getting the likes up. So I'm pulling Kevin Samuels right here. Thank you, Kevin, for the idea. And we're up to 42,000. All right, let's get to 45 before I start talking. So I'm doing the Kevin here. We got to get to 45,000 before I keep going. We're at 42.9. Can we get to 45,000? Just tap the screen, folks. Tap the screen. Get my likes up. That's what Kevin used to say. Get my likes up. Now, he used to drink Red Bull. I drink water. I don't drink Red Bull. I think that Red Bull might have contributed to his early demise. He was only like 50-something, early 50s when he passed away. And I believe he said he had survived cancer. So maybe that has something to do with it. But he used to drink Red Bull. I never saw him drinking water. I saw him drinking Red Bull. When I would see those videos, like, dude, why are you drinking all that damn Red Bull? But anyway, all right, we have 46,000. All right, thank you for getting my likes up, folks. Let's see what we got here. Dally MAK, good morning. Thank you for the gifts. Those of you who have been leaving gifts. Bravo, girl. Thank you for the gift. Let's see. Nico said, good morning. Congrats to the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. I saw that on ESPN. Shout out to the Florida Panthers who won the Stanley Cup. That's the hockey championship last night. Shout out to the hockey champions. Marky Man, good morning. Britt said I didn't finish it. It was too much. What part of it was too much for you, Britt? I saw the whole thing. I mean, I don't know. Different people have different perspectives. I saw the whole thing. It's kind of crazy what they said happened, but I see all y'all should. I say all y'all should watch that documentary. It's on Netflix. It's actually a pretty good docuseries. Irial said, "What are you talking about? I don't know what that means." Plant said, "Are you going to send your son to the I country to fight for your president?" My son's not old enough to fight, so he ain't going nowhere. And I'm too old, so nobody in my family's going anywhere. Plant said, "Put yours on the front line for your orange man." My orange man? What's this got to do with me? What does? How are you connecting me to Donald Trump? Where'd you get that from? Let's see. Low Key said, Carla, good morning. Low Key said, you don't have to make everything public. That's right. And the government doesn't have to make everything public, even. Nikki, thank you for the gifts. Tiffany, thank you for the GOAT badge. JC said, he's not. Only a selfish, money-loathing dim would knock someone pursuing criminals. Who are you talking about? Who are you referring to? JC said, if you can't show evidence, what you're saying right now is complete propaganda. Well, that sounds good to say to what's the word, to discredit or invalidate what's being said, but how do you show somebody evidence when you're in the middle of a live stream? It's not like anybody can post links, number one. Number two, I've already explained to people, JC, I don't know if this is your first time here, I've explained to people that facts don't matter anymore. So if I say something that is true and I know that it's true and you don't want to believe it, you can come up with 1,000 different things that you could say to discredit or to invalidate what I said that would appease your ego to the point that you could tell yourself that you don't have to accept anything that I said simply because you don't want to. So I'm not in the business of changing people's minds. So if that's how you feel, that's fine. But it doesn't invalidate what I said. It may invalidate it in your mind, which is what people are allowed to do these days because of the internet, because of what we have access to. Very easy to invalidate anything in your mind that you want to invalidate. You don't have to accept anything if you don't want to. And if someone decides they don't want to accept something that I said, fine. But I'm not in the business of trying to change your mind. It's a waste of time. Silver Key said, good morning. I'm happy I found this page. Thank you for creating it. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for TikTok for giving me the platform. Nikki said, I'm nosy. I want to know everything. Well, everybody wants to know everything. But we all also accept that we won't know everything that we want to know. That's the way it works. Reciprocal Terror said the politics of personal destruction needs to end. The politics of personal destruction needs to end. Well, keep dreaming. As long as there are people will try to undermine others that they don't like by trying to make them look bad. User said many names there on both sides. Yes, I would agree with that. My theory is that there are many names on both sides. Katie said, this guy again. So, Katie, I don't know if you're happy about it or you're sad about it. Hope you're happy. Freedom, thank you for the heart. Julie Cook, thank you for the share. Reciprocal Terror said other countries have loser pays laws to discourage filing fraudulent lawsuits. Is that true? That's a really good. I'm glad you shared that. Let me look into that. I believe that you're telling the truth. I just want to find what countries there are. Someone on my TikTok live comment said that other countries have loser pays, quote unquote, laws to discourage filing fraudulent lawsuits. Is this true? And if so, which countries have this type of rule? And why does the United States not have this rule? Because the United States, for those who don't know, is the most litigious society in the world, meaning more lawsuits are filed in America than every other country in the world probably put together. And this keeps lawyers in business. So any of you want to guarantee yourself a job and guarantee yourself to have work, go into the medical space, because there will always be people who are in poor health and they want the pharmaceutical industry to fix it for them. Go into the legal space because there will always be lawsuits and people going to court and they need lawyers who can argue on their behalf. So those are two places you will always have guaranteed work, law and medicine. So it is true. I believe it to be true, but many countries have a loser pays system. More formally known as the English rule. I never heard of this. The English rule, where if you file a lawsuit and you lose, you have to pay the legal fees of the person who beat you. So this is designed to discourage frivolous lawsuits by attaching financial risk to filing a weak case. Now, see, if this was a real thing, then people like Tony Busby that lawyer who keeps suing people, he probably wouldn't exist, not because he doesn't have a legitimate reason for some of his lawsuits, but because a lot of the lawsuits or the things that he threatens are probably just done as scare tactics or ways to get money out of people through law settlements, or as a way to just put a negative stain on another person's name. And if you had a loser pays, then he would probably not file all the suits he filed. He would be more selective in filing suits because it would cost him money to file. So the countries that do have this loser pays, also known as the English rule, the United Kingdom has it. They started it. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Sweden, Norway, Singapore, and Israel. They all have it. And by the way, I was reading up on TikTok yesterday because somebody was asking me, could I talk about that conflict going on overseas? What I read and what I found out was that they say that TikTok listens to what you're saying. They have these like AI bots that are listening to everything you say, and they listen to what you say in context. So it's not just that you said a word. So if you say a certain word, then there are certain words you probably can't say. So there are certain names I can't say. But there are other words that it depends on the context in which you say it, that they can say, hey, you're restricted, or you said the wrong thing, or you can get kicked off or banned based on how you said it, the context in which you said it. So for example, I just read off the names of a bunch of countries that I sometimes avoid saying, but in context, I can say their names. So sometimes I avoid saying Germany or I avoid saying Israel, but because I'm saying them in this context, I'm just listing countries in a completely different subject, I can get away with it. But if I start talking about the conflict with Iran and Israel, that could lead to a warning from TikTok because of the context. So it's like you're walking through a landmine in this situation on TikTok. So across most of Europe, it's standard. In many parts of Asia and Commonwealth countries. Now, why the United States does not do this? They follow the American rule. So they got the English rule, we got the American rule. So the American rule says every party pays their own legal fees, win or lose, unless a contract explicitly says otherwise. Now, why is this? Here's the explanation why America does not do this. The legal system has long emphasized that people should not be discouraged from filing lawsuits, especially against powerful entities, due to fear of paying the other side's legal fees. That's a legitimate reason. So let's just say I think Apple did me wrong, or I used to work at, what's a big company? I used to work at Amazon in the executive suite, and I got fired unjustly by Amazon, and I filed a lawsuit against Amazon. Well, what if I end up losing a lawsuit because they got 30 lawyers and I only got one? Now I got to pay the fees of all 30 of those lawyers. That could bankrupt me if I got to pay all those fees. And I was just a person making $200K a year on my Amazon salary. So that's the reason why they don't do this in the United States. And that's a really good reason. Another reason is litigation culture. The American legal system is much more adversarial than there are in other countries. And the business of litigation is deeply entrenched. So y'all got to understand that a lot of people who work in the government in the United States, they have law degrees. So they come from the legal space. They are not probably going to pass any rules or laws that will hurt the legal system, because that's literally how they got to where they are, by working in or learning at the feet of the legal system. Another one is lawyer incentives. Contingency fee arrangements, where lawyers get paid only if they win, are common in the United States, but they're not common in other places. So this is like the Tony Busby. He takes these women who say, this guy assaulted me. They don't have to pay Tony Busby any money. All Tony says is, look, my normal fee is 20 grand for this case, but I'm not going to take any money from you up front. If we win, just give me 10% of whatever you win. So if you win $2 million, give me 10% of that. He makes 200,000 instead of 20,000. Great business move for him. Great business model. So I told y'all, you want to guarantee you're going to have money, go be a lawyer. And the last one, legislative inertia. There's no strong political momentum to change the system. And trial lawyers have a huge lobby. They oppose loser pays reform. So if y'all know what a lobby is, those are people who pull their money together, use that money to buy political influence. So the teachers union has a strong lobby. That's the reason why teachers union does not get destroyed, even though it's clearly a failing entity. The LGBTQ has a strong lobby. Lawyers have a strong lobby. CEOs of big companies, corporations, they have a strong lobby. These people all spend a ton of money to buy political influence. So any of you who look at everyday life and you say, why do things not change in this area, this area, this area? Because obviously wrong and obviously could be better. The reason it doesn't change is because people with a whole lot of money spend money to make sure that it doesn't change, generally speaking. So lawyers have a lot of money, or lawyers altogether, they have a lot of money and they use their money to make sure that things go the way they want them to go. So in loser pays countries, the cost of losing is a major deterrent, as we explained. In the United States, the cost of filing is often very cheap, and the lawyers usually pay for the filing. So to file a lawsuit, you got to pay money. A lot of people don't know that. If you want to file a lawsuit, you have to pay money to literally file the lawsuit, but the lawyer usually does that for you. And they'll just, again, I will only collect money from you if you win. So they're taking cases knowing that they have to win to make money. And in the United States, the debates around tort reform, tort is about the legal system, they often revolve around this exact issue, especially things like medical malpractice, corporate litigation, consumer protection, where there's a small everyday person who may not have a ton of money trying to fight against some big corporation who has a ton of money and a ton of lawyers. So how does that person even have a chance? That's the reason why we have what we have. So that addresses that. I'm glad you brought up that point. So let's see. Where were we? Freedom said Donald Trump dropping his own phone called the T1. It's lit. All right, how many of you going to buy the Trump phone? Nikki, appreciate it. Brian said, I would want the names out. I get it. I think everybody would want the names out. Listen, they put the names out. I'm going to do a lot of talking about it, guaranteed. But at the same time, I understand if they don't put the names out, and I explain to you all why they wouldn't do it. We're at 58,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 60, please? User 402 with the straw man of the day. I can see it already. So straw man of the day to user 4024. Let me read the straw man of the day. Here it is. So you are saying, so those of you who are not familiar with the straw man of the day, it's a common thing that happens around here is when someone takes something that I either said or that I allegedly said, they rephrase it into something that I didn't say, then they represent it to me in the form of a question or a retort or an attack or a ridicule. And then they just pose it to me as if that's what I said, as if they're giving my words back to me when they're actually not. So here's what user says. They say, so you are saying. So any of you want to catch people in the straw man, often listen for someone starting a comment with so. That often leads to a rephrasing of what you said into something you didn't say, or so you're saying, or so you believe, or so basically. It often starts that way, the straw man. And then they say something that you didn't even say, and then they throw it at you as if they're repeating your words back to you, which is not what's happening. So here's what user says. So you were saying that we should forget all these men that violated these underage girls. Did I say that? No, I didn't. That's why it's a straw man. So now I only had to address that because I didn't say that. M. Combs said, I agree with this 100%. Thank you. Queen Tanette, thank you for sending the love you so much. I don't think I've seen that one before. Nikki said, didn't Virginia pass away recently? I don't know who you're talking about. Brian said, we don't care what side it is. You want those people to pay for their crimes. Well, first of all, we got to find out if they committed a crime. We don't know yet. So, Brian, you're jumping a step ahead. A crime must be proven first. Just because you went to Epstein Island does not mean you committed a crime. Going to the island itself is not a crime. So we're at 60,000 likes. Nikki said, the girl that accused Prince Andrew. I don't know. I don't follow English royal family news. Reciprocal said, Patel and Bondi are trustworthy. In my opinion, it will be as transparent as possible. Well, they're as transparent as they're allowed to be. You got to understand, they work for the government. When you work in the government, you cannot just do stuff. Freedom said, weaponized material. Yes. Princess said, maybe they should go to jail. Who? You got to prove they did a crime first before you send somebody to jail. There's no proof that anybody did a crime yet. Carol Ann said, Trump is 79. He made it back to presidency. You can't get him. Sometimes it's a no. Well, if he's on the list, that's one thing, but they would have to prove a crime, which is a separate thing. Kyle said, what will be gained? High-profile individuals put in prison to never harm another person again. Again, a lot of you are making comments as if there's some proof of crime. There's no proof. You got to prove a crime first to send somebody to jail. So nobody's going to jail because no one has been even accused of, let alone convicted of a crime. Reciprocal said it wasn't just on the island. It was done on his plane and at his ranch. He had a ranch in New Mexico. Okay, fair enough. Shah said, news just said this app is getting banned tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, so they've been doing this whole TikTok thing. So let me find out what's the current news on TikTok because they keep pushing it back. But I've heard about the TikTok ban that if they don't sell the company, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see. So See, when I look up TikTok, I keep seeing this libs of TikTok. And I like libs of TikTok, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. So, yeah, so they keep doing these one-time extensions, and they keep doing the extensions. So the first extension was in January, then the next one was supposed to be in like April, and now we are in the middle of June, and they still keep doing these extensions. So they say what I'm seeing yesterday is that TikTok got another 90-day extension yesterday. So I guess we got to wait another 90 days for what happens to TikTok. So I guess TikTok is not being banned. So the one thing Trump's act like a king on is not enforcing the TikTok ban. Was the one thing Dems and the left are glad he's not enforcing. So everybody's talking about this alleged TikTok ban is not happening. So he's extending the deadline. So on June 6th, it was said that Trump was planning to extend the TikTok deadline again, third extension, and he wants to stave off enforcement of a law requiring that the app be banned in the U.S. or sold. So who knows? This might be one of those things where you just kick the can, just keep kicking the can down the line until you're out of office, and he leaves that problem on the next man's hands. Politicians do this all the time. So TikTok has again been extended. Last that I, according to what I just found. Federal rule of criminal procedure, disclosure of matters occurring before the grand jury, Freedom says. Well, it depends. That's one piece of information, but what about when the documents are sealed? Then what? User said, I don't care about the names. I care about the criminals that needs to be accountable. Well, that sounds good. But again, your frame is false here. First of all, we don't know if anyone in the documents are criminals because you have to prove a crime, which means someone has to go to court and they get a trial. So just because someone's in a document does not mean they did a crime. Just because somebody says you did a crime does not mean you actually did a crime. You got to go to court. It must be adjudicated. Number two, you may not care about the names, but if you put a document out that has somebody's name in it, they have been exposed and they otherwise were not known. So it's not just you personally. Nut Squawk said, who finds people guilty? A jury appears. That's exactly right. Nikki said, now I feel bad for being nosy. Never thought about the big picture. And when I first was thinking about it, I wasn't either. But now that I've thought about it more in context, it's very, very appropriate to not put those documents out, to not re-traumatize the people who went through that trauma, especially as underage children. Even if they were adults, it would still apply. Adin Salazar said, I'm already bald. I'm just missing a suit. Well, go get yourself a suit. Then I guess you can be me. You got to get a bookshelf and you got to write 41 books too to put on your bookshelf. And if I didn't shave, then I would have hair. I just shave every day. So I don't have to go to the barbershop. It takes too much time. You just said Obama did lots that was corrupt. He's still protected. Well, when you're the president, of course you're protected. Kyle said, they're elected officials. You can make sure they don't get in the office again. How can you make sure of that? First of all, you got to prove a crime. Emac said, what do you think Pam Bondi being in contempt of court with Supreme Court? I don't know about that story, so I can't offer you anything. Carl said, my blind grandmother could have redacted the victim names by now. What do you mean by that? Gumby said, the real reason why they're not releasing the files is because it will expose that. Well, that sounds good to all of us because most of us are not thinking about the other piece of this. Again, I even admitted I was guilty of not thinking about the other piece. The other piece is, again, you have underage children who are in those files. Do you want to put their names out? Again, I know most of you don't care about them, but there are people out there who will see their names and go looking for them, and people who already know them who will see them and say, oh, I didn't know you were on Epstein Island. I didn't know you got abused on that island. How was that? They don't want to have to go through that again. And we shouldn't be so selfish as we want to see what's in the files as to not consider who we may be harming in the process of doing that. And if someone went through abuse that they didn't sign up for and they had to go to court and talk about that, and now we're going to put the files out and now they got to have the whole world knowing about that, that is real harm. So I don't even like when people use the terms harm. People use it very irresponsibly these days, but that would actually be harm, and I would not be okay with that. Gumby said it was a blackmail operation by certain countries' intelligence agencies. A lot of people have said that you're not the first I heard say that. I understand your position. Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit in the house. Good morning. User said they never released anything about the kids. They said they would as well by elite. Okay, fair enough. Irma, thank you for the gift. The beat cheer. Carlos said he's on the fight logs from New York to Florida. Yeah, I know Trump's on the fight logs, but again, or whoever you're talking about, that doesn't mean he did anything wrong, though. Keith said, but at first it was just speculation. Well, we saw him in pictures. Just by that is guilt by association. All right, there you are in a picture with uh, Jeff Epstein. User said DOJ lies. Everybody lies. Who doesn't lie? Ladybug Flowerbush said, would you have to pre-market up fake crimes or assassination attempts they had Trump with Epstein? I don't quite understand what that question is. You got to rephrase that. Sherry said, I'm sure Trump's name was the first one investigated. They found something they will publicize. Well, the previous administration would have. I agree with that. If they had it, they would have put it out. I generally agree with that. Noke the Doctor says, you play both sides. I don't want to see you in my timeline. Well, I'm not playing, first of all. And secondly, what I'm doing is looking at things from both angles or multiple angles. So you're correct. So if you don't want to see that in your timeline, that's your loss. Murphy said, redact the victims only. Well, yeah, that sounds good. The thing is, to put it in context that anybody did anything wrong, you would have to put the victim out because the victim would have to testify that that happened. That's the problem. So let's say it's somewhere in the document that says Donald Trump did A, B, C with a person. Well, who's that person? Is that person willing to come forward and say that that happened? Now they have to go through that trauma again, whether it happened or not. So just only putting the names of the alleged people who did something wrong is still an issue because, okay, you got their names in it. What's that proof? Nothing. So what's the point of putting the document up? Again, so it kind of goes in a circle. Sherry said there are victims and those who hurt them need to pay the consequences. They are probably still abusing. Well, maybe. Maybe. We don't know. They would have to prove that. And again, you got to go through a whole court case to prove that. Marky says, sorry, I am painting. We're at 66,000. Can we get to 70,000 likes? Tacos and Sam Pretty said, no one is asking for the ID of the victims to be outed, but we should know how our leader is in them. Well, again, you would need context. So let's just say the files just say Donald Trump was there. He was on the island. Okay. I think we can agree he probably went to the island. All right. I think most of us can agree Donald Trump probably went to Epstein Island at some point and got on the plane at some point. That doesn't mean he did anything. So in order for us to know he did something, the person he did it to or with would have to testify. Because if you have no witnesses, you have no case. In a case like this, you got to have witnesses. So do you want to send that person to court again to talk about this and make themselves famous in a way that they probably don't want to be famous? That's the problem. Because if you just put the names out, you're not proving anything. All you're doing is just creating more speculation for no reason. Why would the DOJ do that? Especially with Donald Trump as the current president. Why would they do it? And if that was the issue, if that was indeed the case, why didn't the Biden administration do it? And that's the question that nobody can answer. So if Donald Trump's in the files, why didn't Biden put it up? I mean, it would have been a great move for him. It would have been better than all the things they did in 2024 was to put these files out with Donald Trump's name in it. That's the best thing they could have did against Donald Trump. They didn't do it. Why not? Two reasons. Either one, he's not in the files, or number two, putting his name out would expose a bunch of other people's names who they didn't want to hurt. So they just said, why don't we just keep this quiet? Ms. Griffin said, love your content. Keep on keeping on. Thank you. Spike said, what are you talking about, Willis? Sheila said, education is failing by design. Generally, yes, it is. Sharon Scott said, this is true. Thank you. I appreciate you, Carla. Thank you. Nurse said, just got the most out of both sides and just get the most out of both sides. Make your own decisions. This man is one of the GOATs, one of the great ones. Thank you, Nurse LA. Gemini said, Trump extended another 90 days. Yeah, so we did find that out. Another 90 days for TikTok. I don't think it's getting banned. TikTok's not getting banned, folks. They're just going to keep pushing it back until they get what they want or they do nothing. Reed Rasner has the highest bid to purchase TikTok. I've seen many people put bids out, but I don't know why. I think TikTok's probably not wanting to sell, and why would they? User said Trump wanted it banned, but I guess he changed his mind. I don't know I don't think it's going to get banned. I think maybe it will get sold, or also other thing that can happen is Trump just keeps extending it, and then he just passes it on to the next president and let them figure it out. So Bruce said people are innocent, get convicted, and vice versa. Okay, that does happen. And Freedom says ceiling requires specific findings that outweigh the public's First Amendment. Yeah, so who gets to decide that? I'm assuming that's the judge, right? Beach Bum said 9/11 was a bad day for me. I had to be reminded of my abuser every year. Okay, fair enough. I am back. Said I got a picture with Beyonce. Does that mean that I know her? Well, that's a good frame. I get what you're saying. I think if you ask Donald Trump, he'd probably tell you that he knew Jeff Epstein. Doesn't mean that he was doing whatever Jeff Epstein was doing that is legal. I mean, illegal. Steph said, I ordered your book yesterday. Excited to see what you had to say. Well, thank you. Which book did you order? And by the way, you can get my book, The Third Day, thirddaybook.com. That link you see right there, that's this book, this red book you see here. This book is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. It's my most popular book right now, thirddaybook.com. Get this book for free. Just cover the shipping. Go to thirddaybook.com. That link you see right there on the screen, thirddaybook.com. So she's obviously feeling some type of way from what she's reading. Now, I would think if Candace Owens was to talk about it, she hasn't been talking about it because I think she took some time off for her. She just gave birth. She might go a little bit into Megyn Kelly's waters, but she doesn't seem to get as unhinged emotionally as Megan does. Megan sometimes goes a little off the deep end, as far as I see. So Rambeezy said, if you could speak on the lack of term limits, which turns all politicians into crooks. Well, I talked about that. I talked about why I don't trust the government. I did a whole live on that probably sometime either before last election or right after it, but before the Trump administration started. So I did do that. All right, so we're going to wrap this one up here today, folks. We'll stop 15 minutes early. I started a little bit late. And tomorrow we'll be back with another topic. I have not spent that much time on X this week, so I haven't even seen what the biggest popping news stories are. Actually, I know the biggest one is Israel, Iran. So we might talk about that tomorrow. I just got to make sure I got to tiptoe around things and make sure that I don't get banned on TikTok again. So, wifey, that's cool. Good to see you here, even if you jumped in later. We'll be here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. I usually start at 8 a.m. Today I started about 8:30 because I had to finish some important client work. But 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning is when we will start topic to be determined. If you want to work with me directly, we have a group coaching program called The Circle where anybody can get in. It's only $97 a month, easy for you to get started. If you want to get into our full scale program, that's where you get to work with me personally and our full scale consulting program. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link will give you access to both of them so you can take a look at both options. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. I will see you all tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. Appreciate everybody who's been in here. Thank you for all the likes. We got 82,000. All right, I'll take 82,000 for an hour and 15 minutes. Usually we go 2 hours. So we'll take 82 today. Tomorrow, Kevin Samuel's voice, get my likes up. I'll see y'all tomorrow, 8 a.m. We out.